Hello and welcome to episode 31 of our Conversation to Connect, Let's Get Real, powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm CyndiONeill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. At Exceptional Connections, we offer intentional and innovative solutions to boost your business. So each week we nominate a different member of our Exceptional Connections community to have a meaningful conversation with. So be sure to make yourself comfortable with a cup of tea or beverage of your choice. Take notes and make sure that you add comments in the chat box and then hang in there. And about the 45-minute mark, I'll unmute the lines and invite our listeners to ask questions, share their ahas, epiphanies, and of course, enter into our thought-provoking conversation. The inspiration of our bi-weekly Conversations to Connect, Let's Get Real talks is to create purposeful conversations. We desire to be relevant during these challenging and uncertain times and to support our community to make an impact in the world and of course, stay connected. So as we get started, I invite you to set aside all distractions and invest your attention on the conversation that's about to unfold. Look for just one idea or takeaway that you can put into action immediately so you don't cheat yourself out of the investment you've made here. Our Conversation to Connect this week is with Elizabeth Case from Hillsboro, Oregon. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Cyndi, for having me.
We're so excited. So Elizabeth was a spotlight speaker at a recent May event. And she had a 20-minute opportunity to share with our community. And it's such a great topic that, that we're talking about here, the 3 guaranteed ways to grow your business with follow-up. So this format is perfect because it's going to give us more time to really delve into it. And then also to be able to open the lines at the end for questions from our listeners. So before we jump in here, Elizabeth, take a moment to share with our listeners a bit about your journey, how you became such a great advocate and champion for the power of follow-up.
Absolutely. So thank you for having me, Cyndi. So I started Yellow Dog Consulting 10 years ago, and it really was to help my small business owner friends put systems and schedules around their sales and marketing efforts. In my time before I started my company, I had worked at the Puget Sound Business Journal, and I was continually amazed at how often people thanked me for following up with them. They would ask me for something totally unrelated to buying a subscription to the paper, which is what I did. But it would be like, who's the reporter that I pitched this terrible idea to? Or I heard there was an article in the paper about my client, and can you send me a copy? Or just, do you have an introduction to somebody in this industry? Or I'm looking for a new job. Do you know anybody at this company? I have an interview with them next week. And whatever it was, I always did the follow-up. So I always made sure I sent them whatever it was, like within a reasonable request. One time, some creepy guy did call and ask if I knew any attractive available women. And I threw up in my mouth a little bit and then politely had to excuse myself for another meeting. But for the most part, if you ask me a reasonable question, like, I'm going to take the time to make that introduction to, get you the information you asked for and to help you out. And so I was continually amazed that people were thanking me for it. And it was just so weird. It was like, well, you asked me, so of course I would do that. And I didn't think I was raised that much differently from other people, but I quickly discovered that I was, and that, as I was asking people for things, they weren't following up, and discovered that there were thousands of dollars every year I didn't spend because you just didn't bother to follow up with me. And so as I started Yellow Dog Consulting, I continued, having good follow-up systems in place. And it really has become a big talking point for me, and one of my big tenets of what I talk about and make sure my clients are doing as well as we work together. Having those systems.
That's beautiful. I love that. Well, thanks for kind of setting the tone for us. Before we move on, though, we've got to talk about Yellow Dog Consulting.
Yes.
And your dog, Norm, right?
Yes. Norm is here today.
So Norm, we've got Norm in the house.
Hi. Norm is in the house. He thought about going to daycare today, but forgot that this call was happening. So literally jumped in the car and then jumped out of the car. And then so we sent Cliff, the puppy, to daycare. So he's all set for the day, which is good. And then Norm is hanging out here. So Norm is Oh,
That's such an honor that we not only have you, but your mascot with you, right?
exactly. Yeah. So the original mascot is Hank, and Hank was our first yellow dog. And I discovered I was paying a lot of money to dog walkers and dog sitters to take care of him, and not spending any time with my dog. And so that was the inspiration for the name. And so when Hank passed away shortly after we moved to Oregon, we were on the lookout for our next yellow dog. And this great little rescue in Salem had a cute 6-month-old yellow lab puppy that needed a home. And here we are. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
beautiful. I love
he's
that.
awesome.
And how fun do we get to meet Norm also.
Yes. He'll sleep now and hopefully not fart.
Oops. Well, we'll just cover up we're continuing to talk here.
Yeah.
So it occurs to me that before we start talking about follow-up, we really should talk about networking and lay that foundation.
Yes. Yeah. Networking, you can't talk about follow-up unless you talk about networking. And so I always talk with people when we talk about networking, there's always 3 questions that I ask people. The first is your target market hanging out there? Who's there? Who's showing up to these events? Is it your target market? Can you get business from this event? The second question is, are referral partners hanging out there? So it might not be a target market rich environment, and that's okay. If your referral partners are hanging out there, that can be equally as important to you. And then the final question I ask that I'm always kind of surprised people don't ask is, after a year, have you gotten any business out of this organization? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a year, but it needs to be a significant amount of time. So I'm shocked at how often people will go to an event once and be like, hard pass, it was terrible. And then you ask them, like, well, what'd you do? Well, I sat in the back of the room. I didn't acknowledge anybody's existence. And I just ate my lunch and then left early. And it's like, that might have been on you. But making sure that you're giving it the old college try and showing up and going, like making sure you're paying attention and connecting to the right people. And so knowing who your target market is, knowing who great referral partners are, helps ensure that you're not going to be wasting your time at an event. And so if that's the case, then you should be able to have some really great follow-up from these networking events, whether they are virtual or in person, as we start to return to that here.
Yes. And I love that you mentioned, people should give it a chance, give it a college try, as they say. Showing up once or twice to an event, you really need to be consistent. So that requires your focus and you giving of yourself, not just being, wanting to receive.
Right.
Because it is like breathing, you breathe out and you breathe in. You need to do both. You need to give, you need to receive.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I was just, in honor of one of our listeners, I thought it would be kind of fun to set the context by doing a definition of networking out of the Oxford Dictionary, of course. And so the definition of networking that I was able to find is the action or process of interacting with others to exchange information and develop professional or social contacts. So, I mean, that's a little stiff, right? It's a definition. But the context is you're connecting with other people. You're learning what they're doing. You're, listening for how you can be of service to them, or, even sifting through your head, how could you contribute to them, with your product or service, with a referral to somebody else. And so that's a whole world, right, in and of itself.
Right. Yeah. I always say to my clients too, or to potential clients, we're going to figure out what you can do, what I can do, and what somebody cheaper, smarter, and more efficient than either of us can do. If there's somebody better qualified for the job out there, I'm not giving away business, but I'm just, in my sweet spot and doing what I want to be doing and making sure that, I'm not getting cranky about something. I just did this yesterday with a client where we needed some updates done to her website, and a chunk of it I could do, the content pieces I could do, but there was two little things that I could not figure out. And so I said, I'm just going to call my web developer friend. It'll take her like a half an hour to get them done. She'll send you an invoice and everybody's going to be happier. And my client was super happy with that because she knew that me getting stabby wasn't a great idea.
Well, yeah, but you're using I'm going to use a word here that's going to date me here, but Rolodex, you're right. Using your contacts.
Exactly.
And your world and context of people that who can be of service. And I think that's such a rich thing. We don't need to be greedy or stingy or anything like that.
No.
And then also you want to be operating in your sweet spot.
Yep. And I'm always amazed at that lack of abundance mentality that people have. It's so disappointing because there are, if you're not doing your best work, that shows. Every time I am like, yeah, I can do that, they're not happy. I'm not happy. Like it just, it's not the right fit. So yeah, I can do it. And yes, I love to do it. Like the earlier in life that you can figure out in your career and in your business, you can figure out what those things are, the better. And then figuring out, here's the holes. Here's the things I don't want to do. Here's the things I need help with. Here's who I need to add to my referral network.
Yes,
So,
that is such an important question for all of us to be able to ask. And what is our area of genius? And just stay in that area and be able to subcontract things out to others. I love what you're, that just being able to touch on the, lack of abundance and versus being able to thrive in the environment that you're in and be able to be of service.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to be able to, a quote that you shared at our at networking luncheon, I thought was so beautiful. I wanted to, kind of have you touch on about systems.
Yeah, I love systems. So really what I talked about when I spoke earlier this month was about having systems in place. So I say having systems in place before you attend a networking event makes it that much easier to do the follow-up as soon as the event is over.
It's brilliant because that's why a lot of follow-up doesn't happen is because you finish the event and then, life keeps happening. Emails are, in your inbox. But if you have even a template, and you add a personalized, note to it, tweak it a little bit. I find that my templates just keep getting better and better and better.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like don't set it, like revise that constant. I mean, we all have done a lot of revisions in the last year, right? Like, we've all learned how to pivot. We've all learned how to tweak things. So
they get better and better. It takes less time. But there is an investment of time initially, and people resist that.
Oh yeah.
And, even the process I teach of sending cards, it's like, it takes a little while to set things up.
Yep, exactly.
But once you do, you're going to make up the time in spades.
No problem. And I think because so many systems aren't that efficient that people don't believe it. You really are going to say me, like, I'll just keep the way I'm going. It's fine. I'll do, like, I just won't do it. I won't make the money. It's fine. I'll do these 2 things. I'm not going to do these other 5 things because I don't want to take the time to set it up. So it really is about setting your schedule. So, when we talk about all of this, we're talking about, follow, we're talking about scheduling it. And so the first thing I always recommend is scheduling time to do your follow-up. So when you schedule that networking event, also schedule time to do the follow-up from that networking event and look at your calendar, right? Like you may have 7 more things going on this afternoon that you're not going to get to it today, but can you block 15 minutes tomorrow morning to quietly sit at your computer and follow up with those people you saw in the call, or download that thing that I talked about, or go check on this one thing that you met, go follow up with that client from 2 weeks ago that you forgot to, or whatever it might be.
Yes. Well, like you, I firmly believe that the fortune is in the follow-up.
Oh yeah.
And, it's not a dirty word. Follow-up is really important to growing our businesses. And, part of that, I heard you mention so many different facets of it, having a system in place, being intentional, being focused, making it a priority. So I know you have a lot of different points you want to share on this. So I'm just going to leave it to you to lay those out.
Yeah. In my presentation, I had a bunch of numbers, and I love these numbers. They are a few years old, but they're still not wrong. And the thing is, like, the reason that I think follow-up is so important is because you're leaving money on the table, right? So the numbers that I shared were that 48% of people never follow up with a prospect. 25% of people make a second contact and stop. And just to go back to that, 48% of people never follow up. So when you go to a business event and you hand out 10 business cards, only 5 of those people might follow up with you if there's something to follow up on, right? So if you're in that half, you're in that 52%, you're already way ahead of the game. So 48% never follow up. 25% make a second contact and then they stop. 12% make more than 3 contacts. And then 2% of sales are made on the first contact. So for those 25% who, make a second contact and stop, right? Like, so 2% of sales are made on the first contact, 3% of sales are made on the second contact, 5% of the sales are made on the third, 10% of sales are made on the fourth contact, but 80% of sales are made on that 5th to 12th contact. It's crazy.
It
It's
is.
just like, but you can't call somebody 12 times. You can't send 12 emails to somebody. So how do you effectively follow up without annoying crap out of somebody, right? Like, and I've had that. I remember one time years ago in Seattle, I met somebody at a networking event. I want to say it was like a lunch, and they emailed me and called me like that evening. And I think it was when I had my own business, so my cell phone number was my only number. And it was like 7:30 at night, and I had a phone call from a strange number, and he sent it to voicemail. And I was just like, you got to slow your roll on this follow-up. Like, good job on doing the follow-up on day one. That's great. But you need to give me a half a second to respond to you. So that it was like a phone call and an email, like, and an after hours thing too. And so just be respectful of people's times. Like, we're all on different times and schedules. And so if you are running a business, make sure that you are available for business during business hours. And you can be flexible, and especially now with work from home and homes, and kids doing remote learning and everything going on, we are all very flexible. But just be aware of that if you're sending an email at 10 o'clock at night, that's no problem. But don't text at 10 o'clock at night. That's past people's bedtimes, right? Like, if somebody says it's okay to text them, whatever that might be, keep an eye on those things when you're following up.
Yes. And can I just interject here?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times, if there's windows of time we have to do things. And I think that's where people get in trouble, because they have that window, right? And it's like, I'm available, my head's clear. But what I'll do is I'll write an email to somebody, and I actually used to send it at like 10, 11 o'clock at night, just because I'm doing it and I wanted to get it off my plate.
Right.
And I realized, that's probably not the best thing. I hear people are commenting on when I'm running the email versus the content, because they're noticing that. And so what I started doing is write the email, keep it in my inbox, read it again in the morning with a clear brain.
I like it.
Send it out, 8, 7, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But anyway, just anybody for somebody who's itching, and because I feel for you. I get it. There are windows when we feel like we can do this, our head's clear, we're in the game. But it doesn't mean you have to send it. You could even I could have scheduled that email to go out the next day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can try that out and, find different times that work for folks. But yeah, keep an eye on that if you're sending stuff at late at night, or, how you might be overwhelming, or kind of keeping an eye on that. And I always try and send, I have very healthy work boundaries. And so Nicole is laughing and she knows. And so I'm not going to respond at 10 o'clock at night. And every once in a while, I'll see an email that I'm like, oh, I could just really quickly respond to this and say, yep, keep it going. And it's like, if it's a longtime client, I might do that. Like, this looks great, I'll send more feedback tomorrow. But definitely if it's a prospective client or somebody just interested in it, in working with me, I'll be really careful about not responding after hours, because I don't want to set a precedence that I'm going to be available 24/7 for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking of, in terms of follow-up, there's words that are used like drip. You want to drip on people,
right,
as opposed to a fire hose.
Yes.
And you scare them to death, and then they're like, whoa, and you wonder why they're not responding, or they're, backing up.
Yeah.
Because you really want people to move forward, right? Move towards you, lean in, like, tell me more, as opposed to, whoa.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. So I did create a follow-up template package that we'll talk about in a little bit. But I do have a spreadsheet schedule in there with kind of some recommendations on timelines for following up with folks, so that you're not overwhelming them, because it's a lot and you don't know how. And that's one of the things that I find with people is, what I discovered when I started talking more about follow-up was, people just don't know. They don't know what to say. They don't know when to say it. They don't know how frequently to say it. And that's hard. So it's, let's get some systems in place for this. So it's like, send that first initial follow-up within a day. And then 2 or 3 days later, maybe you try a phone call. Or I often will send that email again at the, reply to that email and just, hey, just wanted to check in with you on this and see if you had questions or if you wanted to get together. As a soft, gentle nudge. A lot of people use their inbox as a to-do list. So I know, I have a couple clients that I will just be like, I know this got drugged down in your inbox, so just putting it back at the top because I'm waiting on an answer from you.
Right.
And with prospects, I'll be like, hey, just wanted to circle back on this, see if you have any questions, if there's anything else we need to do here.
That's beautiful. So what is yours timing in terms of, so is that about 3 days? Is that a week? What is the?
Yeah, usually it's about 3 or 4 days later. You want to give them some time to respond, and they may be waiting on something, maybe something in their schedule to clear out they were waiting on before they could book an appointment, or they just had a busy week and this was not a priority for them. And so it was like, yeah. And so often what I find from that second follow-up email is it gets some sort of response. And sometimes it's, oh my gosh, sorry, I meant to respond to this. I thought I responded to this. Let's talk on Tuesday. Or it could be, like hey, I'm sorry, I was waiting on something, or I wanted to talk to my partner about this, and I'll circle back with you next week. But they usually give me some sort of, I'd say more than half, I get a response from that second email if I haven't heard from them the first time.
That's good. That's a good rule of thumb there.
Yeah.
So before we move on, I just want to
Sure.
let the listeners know, and those listening to the replay, that I'll find a way to get your slide deck with the statistics on there,
Okay, perfect.
and put it as a link down below in the show notes, because
Great.
it's a really great graph.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. I'm just making sure that we're staying on point there and I'm not missing anything. I think we're doing all right.
So part of the follow-up process, because I know you talked about not being too pushy.
Right.
So I'd like to have you kind of address that, because I have some personal thoughts. Follow-up is one of my passions as well.
Right.
I've been a relationship marketing strategist and advising small businesses. So, like you, I really have looked at the different components of follow-up and how to best support others with that. So talk to us about, how, and we kind of alluded to it already in terms of the fire hose and coming on too strong.
If somebody gives you their business card, if somebody says, that's interesting, I want to learn more about it, can you call me? If they're giving you any sort of subtle buying signal, you got to follow up with them, and you're not being pushy. They've asked for it. They wanted to hear from you. They wanted you to send them something. They've explicitly said, can you send me this? I want to learn more about that. I'm interested in this. I need help with this. If I can't stop complaining about Mailchimp is often where people come to me from, because I'm a certified Mailchimp expert. So it's often if I have to open that AM application one more time, I'm going to lose it. And it's like, all right, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's going on. So, it's, if they're giving you that buying signal, if they're sharing their information and saying, let's talk, you have to follow. Like, that's money. And I don't understand why. Here you go, here's the money in your pocket. You just need to follow up with me.
Right. And so the operative word there is buying signal. So people need to understand that there are, Nikki Roush, the sales maven, good friend of mine, who's been a spotlight speaker as well, and Skillshop trainer.
She's great.
And that's her, her jam is like, have those little antenna and have those out for buying signals. So I think we have to really underline that one.
Yeah.
Highlight it, underline it, circle it, that people do give buying signals, and it's our job to pick up on those and respond. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they might actually, although they're throwing out the buying signals, they might not have made the decision to buy. They're just interested.
Yeah. And people are not excited to give their money away, right? They worked really hard for it. I'm seeing smiles in the chat. People are thrilled to part with the hard-earned money that they've made. And so typically it's not giving you away. We got a ferret on the phone today. I love it. They're not excited to give that away. And so it's being there when they're ready and making sure they know that you're ready and available when they're ready and available.
Right.
And I think at this point, we all can smell the desperation out there. So be careful that you're not, like that goes to that being pushy thing. Like you will see if you're aware of it, but just know, keep an eye on that.
Well, yeah, it goes on both ends. One is not acting at all and just, not being in integrity, not being your word, not following up, which I know these are harsh words to hear when we're on the other side of this, but it's good reminders for all of us that we all deal with that. Those those are things we have to overcome. And then
Right.
the other extreme where we're just oblivious to it,
Mhm. Totally.
but if somebody is desperate for the sale
Yeah.
and is coming at you too strongly,
Right.
that kills the sale as well.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. So be aware of that. Like, we can sense your desperation. It's not attractive. And so that's a bigger conversation and a different conversation than what we're having today. But there is also that piece. So be aware of that. If that's something you're feeling, just know that it can be off-putting. And that's different than if you have an event coming up that you're, getting people ready for, like that you want people to join, or a program or a workshop or something like that. Like, that's different than the desperation of, I have bills to pay, I need 3 more clients this month, or I could really use this project. Like, if you can understand that their clients are never going to be on your timeline, you're on their timeline.
Oh,
So
that's say that again. Say that again. That needs to
clients
be
are not
repeated.
on your timeline. You are on their timeline.
Yes.
So you need to make yourself as available as possible so that when they are ready, you're ready, which leads us into social media, right?
That's another networking nugget there, by the way.
Yes, I know, it's a new one. Which leads us into how you use social media, which is kind of my second of my 3 follow-up techniques. Is I use social media as a follow-up tool. I don't use it as a sales tool. I use it as a follow-up tool. So it's one more touch point. If you have to get between 5 and 12 touches before somebody's ready to buy, how do you do that with, when besides the phone and the email and running into it at a networking event, how else are you going to stay in contact and stay top of mind for them? And that's where social media is so handy, right? That you're following them, that you're connecting with them, that you're engaging with them, right? So that they're seeing you show up in their feed, and they're showing up in your feed, and you're engaging and reacting and liking and congratulating them and answering questions they're throwing out there, and making referrals and recommendations as you can. Just being a resource and being a tool. This goes back to my business journal days, where people would ask me all sorts of weird questions, and I would get them the answer, whether it had anything to do with me making a dime or not.
I love that you say that. And I think it's important for us to just spend a minute and talk about the touch points. So we're talking about the different statistics, and how, the 5th to the 12th contact, which, there are some people out there that say it's 25 contacts before
Right.
people say yes, but it's more than 1 and 2, and
Totally
so,
more than 1 or 2. Yeah.
so there are people that they call it the low hanging fruit, that, it doesn't, you can say the wrong thing. You can't say the wrong thing to the right person, right?
Right.
So
Right.
if they're ready to buy, they're ready to buy. And you don't, it could be anybody. That's the low hanging fruit. But for the most part, there's touch points.
Right.
And, like you mentioned, you meet them, that's a touch point. That's a connection.
Right.
You email them, you call them, you schedule a Zoom call, connect at the next one. So what I love about what you're saying, and I wholeheartedly agree, is there are ways, and people don't realize this, that you can actually accelerate the sales process.
Right. Yeah. And
you have control over that. You don't have to wait 2 years.
No, you really don't. Absolutely. So you're on their schedule, but by keeping top of mind with them, it makes it easier for them when they're ready. Okay.
Yeah.
I continue to see that you practice what you preach, that you really do know what you're talking about, and that these people in my network also like what you say, and have known you, and can give you that extended authority out there.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, identify for us the different social media platforms that you use or you recommend that have been most effective.
So I am the marketing consultant who refuses to join Facebook. I don't like that many people. I don't want to know that much. That's not really true. It's just not the right fit for me personally. And it's fine. My philosophy on social media is you need to do what's right for you, what feels authentic for you. And I spend more time with clients who complain about the social media that they feel they're supposed to be on, but don't want to. So it's really where does it work for you? So often, 95% of the time I say LinkedIn. Like, that's the place you need to be if you are doing business and connecting with other business owners. then LinkedIn is the place to be. And then there's everything else. So depending on what you do, Facebook might be a great fit for you. Depending on who your target market is, that might be where they're hanging out and where you like to hang out. And there's community there that you can get engaged with. You may hate Facebook like me and refuse to join it. You may love Instagram and you might be a more visual industry and, business anyway, that Instagram would work well and your audience is hanging out there and you can connect with them there. Or it could be Twitter. And maybe that's it. It's a little more like topical, newsy, that kind of thing. And Twitter could be a great fit. A lot of people tell me that Twitter stresses them out and it's just a fire hose of information and they don't like it. And I say, that's fine. Like you'll find other ways to connect with your network. So, but use social media. I always kind of look at somebody's business card and if it has their social media images on there, I'll go find them, connect with them. Typically what I do, and I talk about this more in my follow-up templates, is there's kind of a few business card piles you get at a networking event. You get those potential clients that are saying, hey, we need to talk. I need help with this. And there's others that are like, we should hang out and be friends or have coffee and maybe be referral partners, or maybe you're just going to try and pitch me something, but we'll figure this out. And then there's those people that you met, you got their card for some reason, they were passed around the table or whatever. But there's nothing, you're not adding them to your database. You're not meeting them for coffee. And that's where LinkedIn always comes in really handy. I take those cards and I send a quick note within a couple of days. Definitely within a week. It was great to meet you the other day at the Exceptional Connections event. I would love to connect here. Hope to see you at another event soon. That kind of a thing. That way they're showing up in my feed if they're active on LinkedIn. I'm showing up in their feed because I'm active on LinkedIn. And when the time is right, they may holler with a question, depending on what I've been talking about.
Yes, you're providing an opportunity for a touch point.
Exactly.
You're initiating the touch point, which is beautiful. And so, because you never know where relationships will lead to.
Exactly. Right.
And to honor people, honor the opportunity. I think it's important to not ever step over anybody.
Right.
And think, oh, they're not worth my energy or time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So can we, since you talk about 95% of LinkedIn, could you share a little bit about the benefits of LinkedIn?
Sure. And it's really more of a whole other conversation. But yeah, LinkedIn is great because it's a business to business, right? And so it's where business, it's I kind of joke it's Facebook for boring people, but it's Facebook for business, right? Like that's where they should be hanging out. That's where it's your online resume, it's your online portfolio. And so it's a great place to just connect and then keep an eye on what they're up to. They may have resources or programs they're sharing. You can see how they're connected to other people in your network. That's always fun to be like, how, especially when I moved and I have clients all over the country. And it's weird when somebody intersects in a way that it's like, how do you know this person from this part of my life and this person from this part of my life? And then we met at this whole other different part of my life. So, it's a fun way to kind of learn more about them.
Yes. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
Small world.
Yeah, it is. And that's what's fun about it. So, yeah.
What do they call it? 6 degrees of separation from Elizabeth. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about social media.
Yes.
And about thinking of it as a supplement to your networking.
Right.
Additional way to, to touch point, to stay in touch with people. Discovering where your target market is hanging out. Mm-hmm. And I love when you talked about the way to engage with people, because there's different ways, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I find, you schedule things on social media often. Like that's a really popular thing to do, is like schedule your posts out so you can kind of set it and forget it. That's a terrible idea. Like it's only a good idea if you have a crock pot, right? Like it's a bad idea, right? Because things happen every day. So, there's a shooting or some election, something, or something crazy going on in the world. There's always something crazy going on in the world that if you're not keeping an eye on your social media, you're gonna accidentally burn some bridges or say something tone deaf because it was scheduled out and not right. So you got to actually keep an eye on your social media, and you need to engage with your audience. You can't just talk at them constantly. If everything you post is just a pitch, like that gets old really fast and people will unfollow you. You want to make sure that you're engaging with others, liking their posts, if they're asking questions, answering them, encouraging and supporting them. those kinds of things. So just make sure you're, and you don't have to do it all the time, but if you're logging in 5 minutes a day is really what I want you to spend on social media. I want you to log into the accounts you're active on. I want you to see what people are saying. I want you to respond to posts if people are asking questions, especially if you're a business, a retail establishment or a walk-in kind of business where they're asking questions about the hours or what's going on. And you can set up notifications on your phone for that, depending on your business type, if that might be helpful. But make sure that you're engaging and responding and actively, connecting and talking to folks throughout.
Yes, no, that's good. I like what you're saying about engaging with them, not talking at them.
So easy to do.
It
Yes.
is. It is. And we want to be aware of that.
We all do it, right? Like,
Well, it happens. Yeah. I mean,
traps, but
right. But it's good to be aware.
Exactly.
So, okay, in terms of social media, you have a strategy that ends up in your email box, right? But it's through Mailchimp. So tell us more about the monthly newsletters that you offer and
sure.
how you use Mailchimp, because you're the queen, right? You're the certified Mailchimp expert. So
I am, yeah. So kind of my third bucket of follow-up is your email newsletter. And I think people forget that that's such a powerful tool to use for your follow-up. So you've talked to somebody about working together, they've been added to your list. And now if you are sending a regular newsletter, that gets you to that 5 to X touch point that they will respond when they're ready, right? I had somebody 2 weeks ago email me and he was like, okay, so I've stayed on your newsletter list all these years. I haven't seen you in 7 or 8 years. But I know you're a Mailchimp expert and I am having a heck of a time with my Mailchimp, like for one of my clients. Can we talk? Can you help? He's like, I think you can help. And so, now I'm working on a project for them, which just came from him being on my newsletter list and me regularly talking about what I do, how I do it, and how to connect with folks there. So your newsletter is, I believe, your most powerful long-term follow-up tool. It is that way to get in their inbox when you're not selling them something, but you're just educating them on your awesomeness and what you do and how you do it and how you think and how you process stuff and how you work, so that when they're ready, they know they can call you. And they're not gonna, and depending on your business, you might not get responses from your newsletter every month. But you should be getting it regularly. You should be, every other month or so, getting somebody who responds and says, hey, I really love this point, or, okay, I've been reading this for years. It's time to finally talk about working together. I get that often from people where it's, okay, it's time to hire you. It's time. I'm ready. Okay, you said this, and I've got to talk to you about this because I can't handle it anymore. I need help. But that goes back to that conversation earlier,
right?
About you are on their timeline, they are not on your timeline, and that's why the newsletter is great, because it continues to trickle for them. And I'll tell people that in my buying cycle, okay, you know what, my newsletter list is, oh, I'm ready. I need to do one more thing. I talked to somebody a couple of weeks ago and she said, I just need one more client and then I can afford to I need this kind of project to come in, which is coming soon, and then I can hire you. And like, great, you get my newsletter. So you're going to hear from me regularly, and just reply when that happens, and let me know, and we're good to go. And kind of puts it back on them a little bit, but it also is, you're going to continue to hear from me regularly. I'm not going to check in and nag you to see if you've gotten that client or that project yet. I mean, I can, and I'll do a little bit of that, but you can always respond to the newsletter and be like, okay, let's go.
Right. Yes. Being top of mind is important. And that's a great, tool that is provided by using the, doing that. And then also establishing your credibility.
Right.
Right. Those two things come to mind.
Yeah.
So as you're talking about this, I'm just curious, what is the difference? How would you define the difference between doing a blog and a newsletter?
Oh my gosh.
What are the benefits of these two outreach tools?
Such a good question. So blog posts are on your website. They're great. It's a great way for you to establish authority on topics, for you to, I often will write a blog post if it's been if I've answered the same question 2 or 3 times. If I feel like I keep writing the same thing over, I might turn it into a blog post. And that way, when it comes up, I can be like, oh yeah, I wrote a blog post about this. Here's the information. You can go back, you can update it. It's really great. And it just sets you as an expert and gives you some authority. I've talked about this. I know how to work on this. Like, here's my philosophy on this. So people can read it and learn about you. Your newsletter is showing up in their inbox. So it might be similar content, but it's showing up in their inbox. You are not hoping and praying that they come to your website. You're asking a lot of somebody to come to your blog, right? They have to find your website, go to the blog, and then read it. You're asking a lot. Your newsletter shows up in their inbox. They just have to open it and read it. Now, you can include your blog posts in your newsletter. Some people, yeah, and that's great. I do that. So you'll see in my monthly newsletter that my past couple of months, past couple of blog posts will pop in there, letting you know what I've recently been talking about. Or I may link to a past blog post that is additional information about the topic I'm talking about for the month in my newsletter. Some of my clients use their newsletter. It's more resource heavy. Here's some tools, like nutritionists and health providers who will include recipes or workout videos or recommendations of products or programs or companies that they love working with. And some are a little more content heavy, where it's some original content in their newsletter every month just for their subscribers.
Wow, lots of great insights there. I hope people are catching that. That was like gold nuggets, because to be able to have the link to your blog in your newsletter seems to me that's the sweet spot.
It is. However, when we talk about newsletters, 20 to 30% is a good open rate, which means 70 to 80% of the people who are getting that newsletter aren't opening it, but they will when it's the right time. Right. And 2% is a good click rate. So I always encourage people to make sure that the content that they want and the priorities they want for their newsletter are right there in the newsletter, that you're not asking them to go too many different places. So if you're like, I'm putting my blog in my newsletter and it's going to blow up, depends on the size of your list. You got right. 10,000 people on your list, 2% of 30% is not bad. But if your list is probably a bit smaller than that, that's 5 or 6 people, 10 or 15 that might go to that blog post, depending on what it is. So make sure you're not putting all your eggs in one basket of expecting everybody, like you got them to open that email, which is hard enough to do, because how many newsletters you just delete without reading. We all do it, and so now you want them to open it and you want them to leave their inbox and go read this article somewhere else. So make sure you're, aware of that.
So people, let me ask this.
Sure.
How often do you recommend sending, like a Mailchimp through the email so that there's content, but at the same time, people aren't feeling like you're hitting them too hard and they want to unsubscribe, which that's an issue there, right?
Right. I always recommend starting monthly. Okay. It is frequent enough that they know you're in business. And that's a big piece, right? Especially during the pandemic this last year and a half, was getting your name in their inbox so they remember that you're alive and in business. They know what you're up to. And then monthly is often a great place to start. It's just frequent enough that you're still top of mind, that people haven't forgotten about you, but it's not an overwhelming amount. Like, I don't have time to read something every week, or even, some people who want to do a couple times a week. You're asking a lot. Like, you're in my inbox, but like, calm down. I've got other things in my inbox too I need to read. And so, when you need to have something, and, every industry is different, right? Every business is different. So you may need to do a couple of different newsletters a month, but monthly is a safe place to start. Less frequently, which is, I get a lot of people who are like, I think I could do this quarterly. I think I could do this every other month. It's not frequent enough. Monthly is really the sweet spot to start.
Okay, that's good feedback.
Yeah.
Okay, let's quickly, before we go on to list building, and because you have some great content there, talk to us about unsubscribing, because we all have that happen, right? We do our newsletter. We're so excited. We're, doing it once a month.
Yeah. And then your dad unsubscribes.
And then people unsubscribe.
Right. That's not a personal story at all. Yeah. People will unsubscribe from your newsletter, and that is totally fine. You want people on your list who want to be on your list. And so when they unsubscribe, it's usually, that's not how they want to hear from you. Maybe they're connected with you on LinkedIn and that's how they like to engage with you. Maybe they just, there's just too much going on in their inbox, and that's one too many email to get. Yeah. So making sure that you're adding people who want to be on your list, have a reason to be on your list, like helps with that. And then engaging regularly. I often see big bumps and unsubscribes when you haven't emailed them in 3 or 4 months. Like they have to remember you're alive. It's like if you pop up out of nowhere and I'm like, who who are you again? I don't remember signing up for this. Unsubscribe.
Right. Yeah. So it's important to bless and release
Yes.
people. And it's okay because you're at the same time, you're adding new people.
Right, exactly. And that's it too, right? You need to make sure there's a list opt-in option on your website. So your website needs to have a subscribe button. If you use Mailchimp, you can integrate with Facebook and add a Facebook sign up form to your business page. Like you can get people to subscribe right then and there. You should have some sort of free opt-in offer, a download or, a bonus something for when they subscribe. Give them a reason to give you your email. Your email is, besides money, the most important currency you have is email addresses, right? So often I find people are asking, well, how big is your list? How can we, like this is a question that's asked when I have clients that are asked, how big is your list? Because we want to grow it. We want you to promote our thing. We want to make sure you have a list worth promoting to, that you can talk to your people about our thing. So
Perfect segue for
yeah.
a little more nuggets here, gems about list building.
Yeah. So, I talk about list building. You have to be, who do you add to your list? Mailchimp will say you can automatically include your clients, both your past and your present clients. Those are implied consent. I mean, they're giving you money. They're okay with hearing from you. Your prospective clients. So not, I would love to work with this person, but we have talked about working together. And this just isn't the right time. So if you have talked to somebody about working together, you can add them to your list. The third one that I recommend you add to your list automatically are your referral partners. I definitely think I have clients I could be sending your way. Great. I'll add you to my newsletter list. And that way you can just, you'll hear from me regularly and you can forward my newsletter on. I always ask when I'm talking to a potential referral partner, I always ask to get added to their newsletter list because it keeps them top of mind for me. And then it's easy for me to hit forward on that to a client, right? Hey, this is the web developer I was mentioning the other day. Hey, this is that person that does this the other day I was mentioning to you. That it just keeps them top of mind.
Yes. And the brilliant thing about that too is when you reply to their, Mailchimp, they're like, oh, they're realizing you are engaging with them.
Exactly.
So that's just confirmation because I know that's how I feel on my end. Like, oh, sorry, I can't come to your May networking event. However, I'd love to come to the conversation to connect with Elizabeth.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah, it feels good on the other end to know that people are actually reading what you're sending out.
Exactly. Yeah. And then on the other end of your list, the things you need to ask first, you can't just add everybody you meet and every business card you get to your newsletter list. So you need to ask, right? Can I add you to my newsletter list? So your database, if you have a database that you have been collecting business cards in for years, or social media, you can ask, hey, you should subscribe to my newsletter to learn more about what I do and how you can get to know me better. This is the way to learn about the classes and the trainings and the events that we have. This is the way to learn about specials and promotions and events and things that are going on. But encouraging people to sign up for your newsletter. You should ask your database. You should also ask people that you're networking with. And it's a great ask. A lot of networking events will say, we'll ask for ways that you can engage with folks. And I always say, ask if you can add them to your newsletter list. People aren't going to say no to that. They might unsubscribe later, which is fine, but they're usually not going to say no to that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we talked about also, which I want to mention this because I think in closing, this is a great reminder. It's important to have a subscribe button on your website.
Yes.
Tell us why that's so important.
You have to give ways for people to sign up and learn from you, right? Like for me, I go to the website to learn a little bit more about you if I'm interested in working with you. And that's great. That's what your website is for. If your social media is on there, I might follow you somewhere in some capacity. But if you have a subscribe button, I'm probably going to subscribe, especially if it's like a free download or something of interest that I can just sign up, check it out, see the method to your madness and how you work. That's always a helpful way to have that. So make sure there's a way for people to opt in to learning more about you.
We always want to make it easy for people to work with us.
Exactly.
That's the bottom line, right?
Yes,
and they may and thus the 2% rate on, you might look at it and think 2% click rate. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you how, we have so many demands on us, so many things pulling on us all the time. And so I personally like when I know that somebody's doing a newsletter on a, semi-regular basis and I can't read it, I put it in a folder.
Yeah.
And that way I can go read it when I have time.
Yeah.
And it's not lost in the, we've got Nicole Lux Ritchie from Eccentric on the line here. So I got to keep my email inbox tidy, right? Well, this has been super fun, Elizabeth. I know we went a little bit over here because you had so much great information, but before we open the lines for Q&A, I want you to be able to share with our listeners who are listening to this live and also on the replay. So how can they, learn more about what you're doing, connect with you? What is the best way?
The best way is yellowdogconsulting.com. So that's my website. Make sure you type it correctly. So yellowdogconsulting.com. You can see cute pictures of Norm and Cliff. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. I have my kick-ass follow-up templates. So if you are saying I need more help with that follow-up, you can go to my follow-up templates are there. And if you use code newsletter, you'll save 50% on those. So check that out. I also have a couple of free resources. I have a monthly marketing calendar. So if you are going, okay, I know I need these systems, it's a free download and it just kind of walks you through week by week what you need to do. And you can customize it for your needs. So you don't have to do everything, but you do need to be doing some marketing every week. It's a part of your business, like it or not. And then I also have a newsletter setup checklist. So if you're going, okay, I don't even know where to start with setting up my newsletter, I have a free download there that you can kind of figure out like, all right, how do I set this up? How do I get it out? And I have a automation sequence that you'll get a few emails each week, get an email a week for about a month to walk you through all of that as well. And those are under the free resources on my website.
Beautiful. And again, just to kind of circle back on this, so you have your kick-ass follow-up templates to grow your business. I'll have the link down below as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
And do use the code newsletter to get a generous 50% off on that. And I purchased them and looked over them. They look great. So
there's
intimidated by, the idea of templates. Take a look at those. It's great. Give you a good starting point.
Totally. If the follow-up and if you're struggling with that whole, when do I say it and how do I say it? This is what you need. This will.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So I've unmuted, and so let's just go ahead and open it up for Q&A here. And anybody has any questions, this is a great opportunity. And also any epiphanies or ahas or action items that you're going to take, be sure to mention those.
So I think my epiphanies and ahas are, I've actually been working with Elizabeth for a while and she's been great to help me stay on track, but just the idea of doing the follow-ups that work for you, like being on the social media channels that work for you, and don't get all hung up on what you can't do. I used to panic and freeze because I do not want to follow up with people over the phone. I don't want to call people. So I'm like, okay, well, how would I start just emailing them? And now I'm full, just about full at capacity. And all I do is email follow-up. I don't call people. If you're going to call for me, you're super special.
Yeah. Love it. I love it. I think Nicole and I are women of a certain age that are phone averse. There's a weird demographic of us that kind of grew up and had the phones, and now we're like, you know what, but I don't have to do it this way. So, email is more efficient. I find emails more efficient for me. I can reply on my time. I'm not interrupting you. I don't answer the phone if I don't know who the number is. So, you're probably gonna go to voicemail anyway. But an email, I can respond on my time and I'm not caught off guard, which I like. So, but that's not for everyone. So
I think that's so interesting. I've noticed that myself, that, in this day of Zoom, especially with all the shut-ins and COVID, it's accentuated. But where are the days where you can just call somebody, right? And say, hey, what's going on? Can we chat? It's almost like I've noticed it's like bad manners to do that.
Right.
People are like,
we have an appointment
to make an appointment to talk.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, the can I call text is useful.
Yeah. And so,
Right.
I think it's worth a moment here just for us all on the line to discuss that when did the memo go out and why did I miss it? I kind of had to figure it out the hard way.
But what's weird is I don't like texting. Like texting annoys the crap out of me. And I don't know why. Like, it's like a constant barrage of like demands in my phone all the time. So I don't, and when it comes to business, that's not my preferred contact method. So, it's just, unless you're a client and we are actively doing, like a client texted me yesterday. He's like, I got 20 minutes. I'm trying to review the newsletter. I've got 2 things. Can you jump on the phone really quick? No problem. But yeah, it's just interesting. And so I wait for what's the best way to talk. Do you prefer, you can also often ask, especially with clients and prospects, when you start that conversation, start working with a client, it's how do you like to be communicated with?
Right. It may not be your optimal way.
Right.
But if it's theirs, we want to note that and pay attention to it.
So to continue to pay their bills, you should probably figure out how you should be communicating with them and how they like it.
Exactly. Because otherwise you're just doing it and they're like, they're annoyed at you and they haven't even read your text yet. we don't want
I think it's also, it's that what communication is what for what, like someone will start texting me and I love a good text,
right?
But I do not like text conversations.
Yeah.
To me, it's like the text is, are you free for a call?
Right.
Pick up milk at the grocery store. I'm
right.
over by the seafood aisle.
Right.
That's what texting is for to me. And if you miss it in that, 2 minutes, then you missed it.
Right.
Whereas email, that's when you want to get real granular and this is what I'm thinking and this is and what do you think and answer these 4 points and
right.
And then the call is that back and forth. Hey, can we brainstorm this? I need a little moral support. I want to check in with how you're doing. So I love communication, just the varied ways. And then Messenger is just so that you can, text people to lose their information and have it go into weird black holes of randomness.
Right.
Oh my gosh. It reminds me, I can't remember the name of the movie. It's like Drew Barrymore was saying something about there's so many portals to be rejected. It was about dating. And that reminds me of that. I mean, we've got the text and the message and and there are times that I'll see something come through, but I'm driving or whatever. And then I'll go, where did I get that? I mean, what I have to go check my email and my voicemail and my, message and my Facebook message. And it's just talk about black holes. That's definitely.
I have to keep on my to-do list every day. I have a note here that says voicemail and text because I will forget to go check. Like if I'll listen to it or I'll see somebody called, but I don't have time to listen right now or respond. And then a week later, I'm like, oh no, I never called them back.
Yes. So. Yeah, so many different ways to be able to, connect with people, communicate with people. And so just to tie a bow around this conversation, which I think has been just brilliant because, being able to meet the needs of your prospective clients is really important, regardless of if it's your thing or not. I mean, we could always work it to, like Nicole does, brilliantly, just be able to work in her comfort zone. But ultimately, we want to be able to follow up the way people want to be followed up with.
Yes.
So that's super important. So thank you so much for your time and generosity, Elizabeth. And before we close here, I want to, give you an opportunity to offer some parting words that you'd like to leave our listeners with.
I always like to give a good to-do list. I love, and things are always in 3, which you'll see in my newsletter. But the things I would say from today's conversation and last week's presentation are, just make sure that you are scheduling time for after each event to do the follow-up you need to do. If you add it to your calendar, it makes it a lot easier to get started. And then again, as I was talking about earlier, checking your social media daily and engaging with people, not just talking at them. And then the final thing I would say would be set up and send your newsletter if you're not doing it. Get that going. Start getting your name in their inbox on a regular basis.
Awesome.
Yay.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we encourage you to check out our other replays of Conversations to Connect. Go to YouTube and check out Exceptional Connections. Be sure to subscribe and, click the thumbs up if you enjoyed this conversation. And thank you so much for joining us. Signing off.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
guys. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.